God here. And it's football season. And it's like 100 degrees outside. Sorry about that. Welcome to Season 4 of Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoyseth and Dave Daba.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is week number 2, Mr. Hoyseth. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I am Dave Daba up in Northern California, and I don't know about you, Brad, but how many weeks will it be before the train wreck in New York, where I'm talking about Zach Wilson here, officially derails the Jets season? That has to be the biggest question in the National Football League right now, Brad, other than the fact that I beat you last week in our picks. The real question is, what are the Jets going to do at quarterback?
You know, Dave, I'm not as concerned as you are. I'm really not. I'm going to go against the grain on this one, really. The Jets won, right? I mean, they look good in the second half. The defense is really good. And so when you have that element, you're going to be in a lot of games. And so, Zach Wilson is still a young kid. He's not great, but he's definitely not Aaron Rodgers or anything like that. But, man, what a start for the Jets, right? I mean, how much money did the Jets spend on old guys in the last 3 months? What were they thinking on Dalvin Cook? I don't get it, Dave.
I don't know. I was actually having this conversation earlier, and I said, like the Vikes basically said, Dalvin Cook is starting to ski down the backside of Career Mountain, and they could see it, and so they didn't want to pay him his $12.5 million or whatever it was. The Jets were willing to up. I think he gets like an $8 million deal. So, I think they're willing to, you've been more down on Dalvin over the years than I have. I felt like Dalvin had another, maybe one more good season. And if I were the Vikings, I would have tried to negotiate a deal with him where we paid him like $8 million this year with some incentives. I would rather have Dalvin on the Vikings than on the Jets. I like the move for the Jets. I just think that as much as I want to believe in osmosis, as Aaron Rodgers does, I'm just not sure Zach Wilson spent enough time with Aaron Rodgers. Look, it took Jordan Love 3 years for Aaron Rodgers to rub off on him. I don't see it with Zach Wilson. I mean, I hope he plays well, but I think the statistics from his first 2 years in the year are not suddenly going to go away.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that, I started writing stuff down this week, Dave, rather than just completely shooting from the hip on this. I figured I'd give us some actual content.
Oh my God, you are more prepped for today's show than I am.
No, just we'll call them observances, right? And first of all, my wife got on me last week because I showed like no energy at the beginning of the show. So I'm going to do my best now to talk faster and maybe look a little more excited. Okay. First things first, though, last Thursday night, I had to write this down because it really bothered me. I'm watching the Lions versus the Chiefs, and I don't know why ESPN feels the need or thinks for some reason that this is entertaining, but I don't need to have Aiden Hutchinson's parents mic'd up in the crowd. Okay, Dave? I don't need Aiden Hutchinson's parents. I don't need Travis Kelce's mom wearing a half Chiefs, half Eagles sweater. I don't care about that stuff. I find it more entertaining than Manning's, right? Okay, so that's my first. You got any comments on that? Are you an Aiden?
Oh yeah, I mean, as much. So I'm all for stretching the boundaries of broadcasting. I'm all for trying out new things. And my thought on that is, first of all, that should have been tried by the folks over at the USFL first or the XFL before it ever made it to the NFL. They should have tried it in the preseason if they were even going to think about trying it in the NFL. And then furthermore, I'm with you. I thought it was absolutely horrific. It would be one thing if like LeVar Ball's son played in the National Football League and you had somebody that was just going to be comical and they were going to, be speaking from the hip constantly. But this was just, hey, whatever. and there was no context there. I would much rather see more mic-ups happen with coaches in the National Football League. That would be interesting if we were able to actually hear what they were saying to each other via their mics. Of course, that's not going to happen, but that's what I really want to be able to do. I'll pay extra for that feature, Roger Goodell.
No, Dave, mic up Jerry Seinfeld. Or, Larry did mic up a comedian. I don't need to see Aiden Hutchinson's parents just cheering when he makes a play. I'm assuming that they're cheering. They should be cheering, right? I don't get it.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Okay, what was your other observation from the week?
I mean, another one. We talked about it last week, and I didn't follow through on what I said last week, which we've been right for 3 years in a row now. The first week of football is going to be ugly beyond belief.
Yeah.
There was some players quarterbacks in particular, that were terrible. I mean, we can't even. Joe Burrow, by the way, made $1 million for every first down last week, I think it was. Okay. I mean, that was bad.
82 yards.
Right. But I think I sent you a text during the Tennessee game where I said, it looks to me like Ryan Tannehill's never played football before. I mean, that's how bad he was. He didn't have any idea what he was doing out there.
That's because he's a wide receiver.
Yeah. I mean, but it's that thing of, what does the first week mean to these guys? And it just doesn't seem to mean anything anymore. And then I saw a stat come out this week. This should be alarming for Vikings fans. That since 1970, Dave, if you lose your first 2 games of the year, only 9.5% of those teams make the playoffs. There's a lot of teams going into the second week going, we're not looking so good for the playoffs, right?
Yeah, and I don't think we're picking tonight's Viking Eagles game. We are recording about an hour before kickoff at Lincoln Financial Field. I'm hoping they send us some money for that.
I didn't even look at that line, Dave, because we're not picking it. What is the line on that game?
God, I thought it was 7. I thought it was pretty high.
Frankly, I like the Vikings in the 7 in that thing. To be honest with you, this is one of those games they generally show up for and they play hard. I mean, the offense wasn't terrible. It was Kirk Cousins really that the 3 turnovers just killed them. I mean,
yeah. I mean the fumbles and everything, but he had a replacement center in, and you know how that goes, and then they lost their right tackle, and I look, to me the Vikings are going to be sitting at 0-2 after tonight. I don't know about against the spread necessarily, but I have very little faith in a Viking victory on the road. I know the Eagles defense has turned over quite a bit since last season. But I've got to believe Jalen Hurts is going to get this thing right. And I don't know if you heard this, Brad, but Baker Mayfield apparently during the second half of the game was able to steal the Vikings defensive signals. And there was a running back who was on a podcast yesterday, Tampa Bay Buccaneer running back, who was talking about it. He said Baker knew exactly what the Vikings defense was audibling to, which leads you to believe, how did they barely win then if Baker knew everything that was going on?
Well, I'm not much of a big Buccaneers fan this year. I didn't see much there. I think it's embarrassing the Vikings lost the game. The Buccaneers are not a good football team. And I think we got that game on our slate today. Anyways, we should probably jump into this deal here. And my first game I have on the list is the Niners at the Rams. And the Niners are 7.5 point favorite. Both these teams actually looked pretty good last week, I thought. I mean, the Rams, I thought, was one of the more surprising performances of the week. Really, I didn't think much of them coming into the season. I'm still not sold on them. And the Niners were really good, I thought, against going into Pittsburgh and winning pretty handily. So it makes for an intriguing matchup, but I think it's one of those where Shanahan, I believe, owns McVay. Am I right about that, or am I wrong? Is it the other way around? I thought it was Shanahan kind of owned McVay, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think over the last couple of years, that's the case.
I just remember a couple years ago, they played the opening week of the season. The Niners beat them like 31-0 or something. It was kind of embarrassing. So I'm going to take the Niners. I think they're a really good football team. I think it's very early, but I think they look like the best team in the NFC right now. I thought they looked better than the Eagles last week. And so they're apparently fairly healthy. Kittle's back, and I think he's 100% this week. So I'm going to take the Niners to beat that spread. It's a fairly large spread. I wasn't real happy about that, but it's 7.5, and I'm going to take the Niners to beat that spread.
Yeah, I was a little, the spread's just so big that I contemplated flip-flopping a couple times when I looked at this game, but and then I also look, Brad, I've been up here in Northern California for way too long. And I've seen, Kyle Shanahan outthink himself way too many times. I mean, I think this 49er team could have won, 2 Super Bowls already under Kyle Shanahan. And I just, I worry sometimes when 49er teams get on a roll. And Kyle Shanahan starts to sort of outthink things a little bit, but purely on paper, like the defense is just so good. Matthew Stafford is gonna have to just do 3-step drops and fire the ball off. He's not gonna have any time against that 49er pass rush, and then furthermore. Their secondary is extremely strong as well. And then I know on the offensive side of the ball, just like nobody has more weapons in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball than a healthy San Francisco 49er team. Like when your third best wide receiver is the guy that scores 2 touchdowns in week 1 against what's supposed to be a very good Pittsburgh Steelers defense, you're on a roll. So I'm with you. I'm going to go with the Niners in this one.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the key there is just on paper, really, it's a physical mismatch, I just think. And I know the Rams had 1 week. I'm not quite so sure it was the Rams looked so good or the Seahawks looked pretty bad. I thought they looked pretty poor. Yeah. But I'm going to say talent wins out here. 7.5 was a little large, but I'm going with the Niners. I wouldn't be surprised if they blew them out.
All right, on to my first game, and boy, Seth, I am just so excited about this one. My Derek Carr led New Orleans Saints, the defense that I believe in, specifically on my fantasy football team, is heading into Carolina to do battle with the number 1 draft pick and the other little Panthers. In that game, the Saints are favored by a whopping 3.5 in this. I was sort of surprised the line wasn't a little higher. I didn't really think, you got to give these rookie quarterbacks some time. And I think of the 3 rookie quarterbacks that played last week, Bryce looked like he had the most deer in the headlights moments in those games. So I like a veteran Derek Carr with some outstanding wide receivers and just a better and a significantly better defense than the Carolina Panthers. If weather isn't an issue, like if we don't have downpours like they did in New York, which I'm sure was Big Blue's excuse why they lost to the Cowboys. I've got the Saints winning this one pretty easily.
Yeah, I'm going to take the points and take Carolina. I watched some of whatever I could watch of that. I couldn't watch much of it because it was so bad.
It was bad.
The Tennessee Saints game was one of the worst football games I've seen in years. I mean, it was terrible. You're right. The Saints do have a decent defense, but Ryan Tannehill did everything he could to make them look great, and he just looked like a guy that never played the position before. And so, but I don't have much faith in that offense. Without Alvin Kamara anymore, and those wide receivers are getting old, and I would like to see them use Juwan Johnson more, the tight end. I think he's a really talented guy, but Carr is just he's an enigma. I mean, you just don't really know ever what to expect from that guy. He'll literally have one great half and one terrible half, and it's just really frustrating because there doesn't seem to be any consistency there. The other team on the other side of the ball, Carolina, I don't know much about them. I saw the 3.5, and it felt more like a field goal game to me on the road. And so I like that extra little hook, and I'm just going to take the Panthers. It wouldn't be a game I would choose. First of all, I don't know why the hell you chose this game. Who cares? To me, this is an unwatchable game, including any game that's played in Atlanta is unwatchable. There's certain that was another game, Dave, that was just brutal to watch. The Atlanta game. I mean, I don't know how anybody gets behind these teams. I really don't.
Yeah, some of these teams are just going to be, challenging to watch. The one thing about Derek Carr is, he's good at game plans. He's not necessarily great at adjustments in game. So he runs the play that he's practiced, but he's not great at ad lib. And that's what sort of separates him from some of the other, better quarterbacks, in my opinion, in the national football. You just watch one of these. I challenge you to watch this game, Brad, which I know you're not going to. I'm sticking with Derek.
All right. Well, I have fun with that one. I'm not. I won't even keep track if I won or lost that game. That's how interested in that one I am. But there is one that is kind of interesting. The Dolphins are at the Patriots, and it's an over under of 46.5, by the way. And I thought they were actually both teams actually looked fairly good last week. I thought, even though the Patriots lost a tough game, but the Dolphins, they're one of the most exciting teams to watch in football. And here's how my week went last week, Dave, with fantasy football. I started the quarterback from Chicago over the quarterback from Miami last week, so that ought to tell you how my week went in fantasy football.
I mean, that right there is just falling for the.
I might do it again this week, Dave. I think I'm going to do it again this week.
No, that's just terrible. Don't do it.
I don't know why.
Speaking of bad games,
doing something wrong.
You've got a Bears Bucks on your list today.
I knew I was doing something wrong when I did it last week, but I think I'm going to still do the same thing this week, and I think it's the right thing to do this week because I think that Patriots defense is pretty good. And, Miami going in there, I don't think it's going to be the same show that they had playing the Chargers, who don't play a lick of defense. So what did I say the over-under was? 46.5. I took the under in this deal.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like the Miami thing was fun last week. I'm not sure it happens every week. But going into New England, Belichick has a tendency to take away your best option or two. And, Mostert is a little bit dinged up this week. He missed a little bit of practice. And I'm not sure they have much of a running game there in Miami to begin with. And I think you're going to have to play one of those X's and O's games where you have to control the tempo and you have to do all those little things. And I'm not quite sure they're that kind of team quite yet. So I'm going to go with the Patriots, or I'm going to take the under in that thing. I think the Patriots keep it lower than 46.5.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. I think the Pats are, their defense is going to be good. The game plan for the Dolphins is going to have to be different than what it was with the Chargers. But what a fun game that was to watch. This isn't going to be the same kind of shootout that we saw last week with the Dolphins. And, the Patriots, still have enough players. I mean, they have very little depth on that team. But they have
Dave,
enough.
do you hear what I'm dealing with here?
Yeah, it's so funny because I have you can't hear it or see it right now, but yes, I have a fly invasion happening, and I have a dog trying to get in, who once he sees the flies will bark to get out. So it's a no win situation. But yeah, I'm totally with you on the under in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Dolphins first of all, Chargers, Staley lets another game get away. I mean, he's just, I don't get what the Chargers see in that guy, but I think you're wasting a lot of talent there in Justin Herbert and some of the people that are there. I think he's going to essentially waste about 3 or 4 years of Herbert's career, I believe.
Oh, yeah. All right. On to a game that shouldn't take us more than a minute to discuss, I think. Chargers at the Titans. Chargers are only favored by 3. We all know how you feel about Ryan Tannehill. I would assume that the Tennessee defense is better right now than the Miami Dolphins defense was. One thing that sort of scares me in this game with that line is their new offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. One Kellen Moore. And what does Kellen Moore like to do? He likes to run the ball, Brad. And he likes, ball control offense. I wonder if he could trade for Dak Prescott if he would. I mean, it's like Herbert didn't throw the ball down the field at all in the first week, really. And so you need to see more of that in this offense. But I think all of that aside, and they do have 2 fantastic running backs. I mean, obviously Austin Eckler and Kelly is a really nice young running back that the Chargers have. So I've got the Chargers winning this one easily, and I'll give up the 3.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Titans, I thought, were one of the more confused teams last week I saw. They looked terrible. And, Derrick Henry it's still a really good back, but it seems to me like he's now not trying to run over people anymore. And I don't want to say he's soft because he's not soft. He's still a big physical back, but he just doesn't quite seem to run as hard as he used to and hit holes as quickly as he used to. And I don't know if he's starting to lose a step or it's just taking one too many shots or what, but this team for Tennessee has relied on him for so long, and they got rid of all their really good wide receivers, and so Tannehill just looks terrible, and that was one of the worst football teams I saw all last week. Chargers, on the other hand, I thought played pretty well. They just couldn't keep pace with the Dolphins. So I think the Chargers are playing better football. They're going on the road. They've traditionally played pretty well on the East Coast. So I'm going to take the Chargers. I'm going to give that 3. I was more hopeful it'd be around 1.5, 2, but 3 is 3, and I just think they're a better football team.
Yeah, in typical Mike Vrabel fashion, they will keep this game within reach, somehow, even despite the fact that Ryan Tannehill is their quarterback. It's like the Jets would be so much better off with Ryan Tannehill than Zach Wilson, Brad. That's how bad Zach Wilson is. But I'm gonna just leave it at that and let you move on to your next game.
All right, Seattle's at Detroit. The Lions 4.5-point favorites. They're now the Cinderella of the league after last Thursday. I think you need to pump the brakes a little bit there. Let's not forget the Chiefs didn't have Travis Kelce, who's their number one option. And, the Lions look good. I give them that. I mean, if you keep the quarterback there upright, he's not bad, Jared Goff. But you got to keep him upright. But the thing about this game is I thought Seattle was terrible last week. They looked unprepared for the season, and you really don't ever see that out of a Pete Carroll team. But they didn't look very good at all. They're going on the road now to Detroit. I don't really love the line at 4.5. I thought it was a little bit high, but I just kind of get the feeling that the Lions are going to continue to ride that wave of emotion that they had last week. I think they're going to get off to a good start to the season. A win over to Seattle gets them to 2-0. That would be a big start for the Lions. I can't remember the last time that happened. It might have been the Wayne Fontes era. I mean, who knows? But I'm going to take the Lions. I'm going to give that 4.5 just because I thought Seattle looked terrible last week.
So Wayne Fontes' name comes up at least once a year in Gods of Odds. It came up early this year in week number 2. Wow. Yeah, because usually at the start of the season, we have no reason to talk about the Lions.
Or Wayne Fontes.
Or Wayne Fontes, for that matter. I got to tell you, I was so disappointed in Pete Carroll. And then I saw the stats on Geno Smith. And his first, it was the first 7 games last season, like over 100% on his passer rating and everything. And then, the second half of the season, he was back to Geno Smith, which is like 85, 88%. And I think, the real Geno Smith has officially stood up. I think that they've got a quarterback that, quite frankly, is in that 20 to 30 range, top quarterbacks in the National Football League. He's in the bottom part of that. And I think that's, going to make a real difference, especially against a team, a good team in Detroit. I'm still not buying all of the hype. I thought Kansas City came out flat. I didn't necessarily think the Lions played a great game last week. I thought they both played their first game of the season. So, it was sort of, as you might call it, a preseason game, but with starters. And, I really feel that's what happened last week. And yeah, had Kansas City had Travis Kelce, they probably would have won the game. Or if Tony could have just caught the ball a couple times, Detroit would have lost that game. I look at this game and I think, Detroit is fine. I like the running attack. How I feel about Jared Goff. I'm more of a Goff fan than you are. You actually gave a compliment to Goff, which is like never happens. I have Wayne Fontes reference and a Jared Goff compliment. I don't know what's going on in Southern California's water right now. But I'm with you. I'll take the Lions in this one.
One thing I did see though that really impressed me about the Lions is their rookie running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. That guy is electrifying, Dave. He is going to have a big year behind that offensive line because that offensive line is really good. And I think that just makes Jared Goff's job that much easier. And so that kid, he looks like the real thing, I think. Look, I think they're a dime a dozen running backs. But then every once in a while, there's a guy that's a difference maker. And I see that kid as one of those guys. I think he'll be a difference maker there.
Hey, the Vikes not having Dalvin Cook's 1,300 yards of rushing this year is a difference maker, if you know what I mean. Running back by committee should solve your.
Dave, the Vikings didn't lose because Dalvin Cook is gone. They lost because their quarterback turned the ball over 3 times. I had my buddies from Minnesota. They were texting me and they're like, "Yeah, but last year he set the record for comebacks in a season." I'm like, well, they had to come back because he got him behind. That's why. I mean, he was the reason they had to come back, right?
He's constantly turning the ball over. All right. Let's see here, Brad. Is it my pick?
Yep.
Okay. Jets at the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys favored by a whopping 8.5 points in this one. I just hope you don't flip-flop because I suspect you're going Jets, Jets. But I'm going to take Micah Parsons, his new podcast, and you can't make this stuff up. And where he said Brock Purdy, this is Micah Parsons earlier, where he said Brock Purdy on his very own podcast is a top 15 quarterback in the National Football League, which sounds about right, Micah. So the Dallas Cowboys, look, you know they're going to implode at some point because they always do. This isn't going to be the point that they do it. That defense, fully healthy right now is just fantastic. They're going to confuse the hell out of Zach Wilson. The Jets should do. The best part of the Peyton Manning broadcast on Monday Night Football was watching Peyton Manning, and they're like, Eli's like, how many more times do you think he's going to throw in the third quarter? And Peyton said 3. Zach isn't as bad as we're all making it sound to be, but the Cowboys are going to have his number from the jump. They're going to try to control it on the ground, and that's not going to work all the time. So they're going to be forced to throw the ball. Eventually, they're going to fall behind. Wilson's going to make some mistakes, and before you know it, the Cowboys are going to win by 14 or more points. I got the Cowboys winning easily at home against the Jets.
Yeah, I don't see it, Dave. First of all, let me say this: the Cowboys looked great last week. I'm not. Look, I'm not.
We both like Brian Dable
about the Cowboys, but I thought the Cowboys looked. That was one of the games where I just turned it off. Late second quarter, I was like, okay, this is over.
I told my wife, I said, hey, let's turn on one of those Real Housewives of someplace.
Exactly, right. But the other team on the other side, the Jets had an equally they had an entertaining win. You can say what you want about it. 4 plays in, the superstar quarterback, the biggest story in the offseason is off, and you're thinking to yourself, man, how many TVs just shut off? How much money and revenue in advertising did ESPN lose on that game? Because they've been planning this since the day he's, signed with the Jets, right? And so to have it all, go up in flames 4 plays in was, karmatic in a sense. But, look, the Jets could play some defense, and I love their coach, Saleh. I think he's a really good guy, and I think he's a far better coach than the guy on the other side of the field. I think he'll have them ready to play. I thought the line was a little bit high. What is it, 8.5 or something? And
8.5. I'm giving you 8.5, and I would have given you more.
Well, then go ahead, give me more. I'll take more if you want to give me more. I'm not a prideful human being, right? So, but anyways, yeah, I just think it's a closer game than that. I still have, I don't think Dak Prescott is like Mr. Consistency, is he? I don't know. I just think I think it's a good defensive struggle, The Jets shouldn't have won last week, should they? Really? And somehow they pulled off a miracle. To me, that was a miracle.
How much of it was the Zach Wilson and the Jets winning versus Josh Allen losing?
Dave, the Bills are one of the legit teams in the NFL. And the Jets beat them with their backup quarterback. Look, you can say what you want, but that's a big win for the Jets. Talk about some great momentum going into week 2. Now, they obviously have to get past that big elephant in the room, right? Rodgers not being there anymore. But it just goes to show me that they wasted a lot of money on old guys last year. There was no guarantees Rodgers was going to come in there and turn that thing around. There's not, Breece Hall is still a really good football player, even though he's come back from an ACL. We saw his burst there last week. They get the running game going. Score a couple. That defense is good enough to keep it close. That's what I'm saying. I don't think.
I'm with you. I mean, that Jets defense is definitely good enough to make this interesting. And it's not like Dak Prescott had a great game against the Giants either. I don't think we really saw, the Cowboys offense. I mean, they were spotted 16 points, it's like, just kneel down for the rest of the game, Dak. You don't take any risks.
The Cowboys historically over the last 5-7 years are one of the most inconsistent teams in football.
Yeah. And yet, they've the Cowboys have won 12 games or more the last 2 seasons. They're
your Super Bowl pick. I understand.
They are my Super Bowl pick this year. So, there's that.
All right. Well, I'll let you off the hook there, but you might be texting me over the weekend on that one. So, Cleveland is at Pittsburgh. The Steelers are 2.5-point dogs at home in their own building against Cleveland. And I think we would all admit Pittsburgh looked pretty bad last week. Cleveland looked like Cleveland. They do some things well, they do some things poorly. And I wasn't swayed one way or another on the Browns. That's for sure. I'm not sure what they are yet, but Pittsburgh doesn't frequently lose 2 games in a row at home like that, and I just sense that it's now time to have a good talk with your team. They're a resilient organization, the Steelers. I don't know how many years it's been in a row since they haven't gone under 500, but we go back to that stat I mentioned earlier in the day. If you go 0-2, you only get a 9.5% chance of making the playoffs, and the Steelers. That doesn't sit well with them. And Mike Tomlin is a great coach. He has a way of turning things around and refocusing and getting guys' attention. I think he does that this week. I'm going to take the Steelers in kind of a surprise and say that they even that being a home dog is offensive to them, and they're going to beat the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I'm not on the Deshaun Watson wagon. I don't think there's a bandwagon for him. It's just a wagon. At this point, I thought Cleveland looked like, typical Cleveland, except for the fact that they won. So I'm with you on this game. I think Mike Tomlin, sort of turns things around. But I mean, was anybody more disappointing last week than Kenny Pickett? And I he was the MVP of the preseason, Brad. So, I believe the Steelers are going to, right the ship. I said it before. I think they have, a good defense. I'm not putting them in the, 49er Cowboy category, but, they're a tier and a half or 2 behind. It's a good defense. I think it's a divisional game. I think they'll take care of the Browns in this one. Happy to give up some points for it as well.
Yeah, I think they might have lost their defensive tackle, the Steelers. I thought I saw something go across the ticker on that a couple hours back. But, it's always a fun game, the Browns and the Steelers. It's a great rivalry. I just think at home, I got to take the home dog there.
Yeah.
In that one.
All right. Moving on. I've got the Packers at the Falcons. It's probably one of the games. Voiceup's like, why the hell did you pick it? I was torn between that and like the Raiders and Buffalo, and I didn't have a good sense of where I wanted to go with that. So I went with, this is supposed to be the top 10 games worth spending some money on. Okay. I don't know if that's this. But Packers at the Falcons. Packers are favored by 1.5 points. I like that Falcons running game. But Brad, I'm going to go ahead and flip flop on this. I'm going to go ahead and go with Jordan Love and the Packers. I just think that Aaron Rodgers osmosis thing is a real thing. And I think 3 years with Aaron Rodgers has rubbed off. I liked their running game. I liked how they handled themselves. Their defense was better than I expected it to be. I think the Packers are going to pull this one off. I'm changing my pre-vote, and I'm going with the Packers.
Well, to me, if Aaron Jones doesn't play, that's a big minus for Green Bay, because I think he's a great football player. I really do. I've been on the Packers for a couple of years now for way too much running back by committee. I need to see more Aaron Jones. Jordan Love looked pretty good. I mean, he looked more poised than Kirk Cousins, Dave. And,
No.
And so through one game anyways, I mean, it was a Bears team that looked terrible. I mean, on every flank, the Bears looked bad in that game. But at the same time, Jordan Love looked pretty good. He still is, I don't think he's going to have Christian Watson back. I love that coach on the other side of Atlanta, though. I think he's a really good coach. And so they're at home. It's a tight game. I don't really like the game all that much, but I'm going to take the Falcons and give the point and a half, or take the point and a half, or whatever it was there. I just think playing at home, I'll take a home dog. I like home dogs.
What I was thinking here is that the Packer defense was going to step up and sort of slow down the run in Atlanta and force their quarterback to have to win with his arm. And I'd much rather have Jordan Love throwing for a win right now than Calvin. What's his name?
Desmond Ridder. You don't like Desmond Ridder?
Desmond Ridder. So that was sort of the thinking on this. I think, Vegas has them favored, but for a reason. And I'm a big fan of that Atlanta Falcons head coach as well. But this Packer team maybe is a little bit better on the defensive side of the ball than I gave them credit for entering the season. So it will be interesting to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, I really like the weapons they have in Atlanta. I think they have some really good young weapons there. They got 2 or 3 guys in the backfield that can run it. They've, Drake London's a good-looking kid, and the big tight end they drafted a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Ridder doesn't have a lot of experience, but he had a heck of a career in college, and so we just don't know a lot about him yet. I think we're going to find out a lot about him in the next couple of weeks. It starts right here. They get a win here, and all of a sudden in Atlanta, they're starting to feel it,
Yeah. Yep. All right, Mr. Oisov, I think it's your last pick on your side.
Speaking of that, the Bears are at the Buccaneers, Dave. This is not a game you'll be watching, I'm sure.
No.
The Bucks,
unless Brad Johnson comes out of retirement.
The Bucks are 2.5-point favorites. The Bears looked about as bad as they could look last week. I'm hearing rumors that they're kind of in shock afterwards. So they really thought that they were going to be a competitor this year and a good football team. And so I don't know. I mean, I didn't see anything to make me believe that at all. But then again, you got on the other side, you got the Buccaneers who I think the Vikings just gave them the football game. I don't think they're a good football team at all. Their defense is okay. But I get a sense there's a lot of fear in Chicago, and they're going to come out hot, I think. I really do believe that. I think both these teams are inconsistent. I think Buccaneers go the other direction this week. I think the Bears get back to winning ways. I think they win this game on the road in Tampa.
Yeah. I think last week's game, I don't know how much footage I saw, I watched the whole game, and then, I saw some of the breakdowns of that game, and it's like there was one play in the fourth quarter, Brad, where the Bucks had like 6 yards to go for a first down, and they had three wide receivers on the left side and maybe a tight end. They had four eligible receivers on the left side, and the Vikings were all playing beyond the first down line. They were all playing back. And then they had Mike Evans on the right, solo Mike Evans on the right, and the quarterback was also playing the beyond the first down line. And I'm like, what the hell is that? I mean, like what did Brian Flores of the Vikings get outcoached in the second half of that game? Did his defense get outcoached by the Buccaneers? Will it happen against the Bears? Yeah. Look, I'm just like, I think you saw the first head coach who's going to get canned this year in Chicago. I think it's going to be an ugly season. I would love to see it not be. But I think what we saw in week one is who the Chicago Bears are. And I think you'd be crazy to start Fields as your fantasy football quarterback in this game, like you did last week instead of Tua.
Yeah, you know what? You know what, Dave? They need to quit trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. The guy is a running quarterback, and he's great at running the football. Yep. And so let him do his thing, you know. And I think that's going to be the message this week. Let Justin Fields do his thing.
I don't. I don't think they're going to do that unless they have to. I think the first half of the game is going to be more of the same. Maybe the second half of the game we see it. Look, Justin Fields could be a great player, but in the National Football League as well as I do, you're only as great as the situation you're thrown into, and wrong coaching staff with the wrong talent. Even Troy Aikman can go 1-15.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right with the wrong coaching staff thing. I get that, but yeah. I don't see a big difference between Justin Fields than I saw with a guy in Baltimore. When Jalen Hurts came into the league, all he could really do was kind of run the ball. And I think he's a talented kid. He is a bit, Vince Evans comes to mind. One of those guys that is going to be how he's going to make his money early on. He's going to have to run the ball and frustrate, but at some point you got to get some other guys involved in the offense. I get it.
It's funny because I always thought Lamar Jackson had a great arm. He overthrew people occasionally, but I always thought he had a great arm. And Justin Fields, I was like, Brad, how those Ohio State quarterbacks are.
I do actually. Yeah, you're right.
And I mean, I keep making the argument for you, the Brad Hoyseth argument. You can't trust an Ohio State quarterback. Don't make me hunt down the video.
Not since Mike Tomczak.
We absolutely have it. All right. On to our last game of the week on Gods of Odds. Chiefs at the Jaguars. Over under 51.5 in this particular game. I saw this and I thought, I don't know where Travis Kelce is at this point. What I do know is the Jaguars defense, quite frankly, isn't the greatest defense in the National Football League right now. As long as there's not a monsoon, I've got the over in this particular game. This Chiefs defense it's amazing how just okay the Chiefs defense has been, middle of the road for for basically Patrick Mahomes' entire career with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're just okay. Yeah, and I think it's more of the same. I expect Trevor Lawrence to put up some big numbers in this game. He's got, Calvin Ridley looked great. He looked resurgent. They have one of my all-time favorite tight ends in Evan Ingram on both of my fantasy football teams. And of course, Zay Jones. So and you were right about Travis Etienne, their running back. He looked better than I thought he was going to look. So I'm looking at big points in this game from both sides of the field. There'll be very little defense played in the first three quarters. I would take the over if I were you. Yeah,
it's a game that, to me, that I think the line is set pretty well. I think it's hard to tell what this game's going to be all about. I mean, Jacksonville at times can look good defensively. The Chiefs, I thought, struggled a little bit offensively without Kelsey. They didn't have their defensive tackle last week, the Chiefs, either. Chris Jones, I think it is. And so I'm going to go the over too. It's an entertaining game. I think there's a lot of points scored. Could be one of those where whoever has the ball last wins. But if I was a betting man, I would take the Chiefs to win that game, Dave. But I'm going to go the over with you.
Yeah. Anything can happen in a game like this. Trevor Lawrence has enough weapons to steal this win. I have a hard time seeing Kansas City going down 0-2. Andy Reid knows what you know about those stats, Brad. Starting a season out 0-2, what that means to, even making the playoffs, less than 10%. So I think this is going to be a very interesting game. All right. That is our top 10 games worth actually spending some money on for week 2 of your 2023 National Football League season. Mr. Hoysaf, one question for you on my end is Josh Allen just not a great quarterback? Is that really where we're at this point? Because the stats say Josh Allen, since Brian Daboll moved on, is not a great quarterback.
Well, I think Josh Allen is a gamer.
Yeah.
He's a big body kid. He adds that element of being tough to get him down, kind of like Roethlisberger was for a long time, But I don't know. I'm not sure the coaching staff is great there, Dave. I mean, when you can't figure out how to get the running game going over a 4-year period, you can't blame that all on Josh Allen. And so at some point, you got to balance the offense a little bit. It can't be just one guy trying to win a game for you, because every time he loses, then it's going to be his fault. And every time he wins, he's going to be the star, right?
I mean, you're right, Brad.
10 other guys involved.
The coaches aren't throwing it into triple coverage, and they're certainly not expecting him to do that.
Well, if you expect him to score every time he's got the ball and you're not willing to run the clock and control the tempo, then I think they are partially to blame for that. The guy's got, sometimes, here's the Josh Allen's biggest problem is he needs to throw the ball away every now and then. I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
He takes too many hits and he throws the ball into coverage way too many times. And that is a fault of his. I will give you that. But at the same time, I don't think the Bills, since he's been there, have put him in the best position to win big games and win championships. There's just too many big games, and the AFC is loaded right now. And unfortunately, only one guy gets to hold that trophy at the end of the year. I think Josh Allen is a decent player. He's a good quarterback. He's fun to watch. But at some point, Buffalo's got to even up the offense a little bit and get some running game and take some pressure off them. There's just so much pressure on them every single week.
Yeah. Hey, Brad, one quick thing I forgot to mention, I wanted to mention, was the injury when Aaron Rodgers went down. First of all, it wasn't like a huge hit. that took him down. Something nobody's talked about. That they immediately went to. He wouldn't have had the injury if he had been on grass. No, he's an old man. When you get older, you get injured more. I mean, quite frankly, that's what happens. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's fact. And what I really didn't like about the play was the cut block. And I've never been a big fan of the cut block or chop block. You call it what you want. I just didn't understand how that would have been more effective with the 3-step drop. I mean, and I think Aaron Rodgers, had spoken about, that type of blocking during preseason and how he didn't like it. So it was ironic that was, the player that, tackled him. And then, of course, I mean, he, those things don't just snap. It was probably going to happen at some point to begin with, but especially on something that wasn't that big of a hit. But I just
Dave, I tore a calf muscle playing golf one time. Okay,
yeah,
and I wasn't playing in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a young man's league. Hey, one thing we forgot to talk about was just how terrible the Denver Broncos were. That was an abysmal performance by them. The Indianapolis Colts could there be a less watchable team? Indoor football, Dave, I just don't get it. Indoor football to me is watching a game in Atlanta, watching a game in Indianapolis. There's Houston, watch a game in Houston.
I was so disappointed in the Tennessee Titans organization, which isn't, it's not like I'm sitting here, constantly watching every move they make, but they have their new stadium approved and they've broken ground on it. And it's going to be a dome. And I just don't get it. I didn't think the Vikings should have built it. I thought they should have made that thing somehow retractable. I like outside football a lot. I guess maybe in LA with, it's LA, maybe okay. They've got those big doors. It's sort of open, I guess. I'm not into dome football either.
Broncos, though, that was a tough performance, Dave. I really thought Sean Payton would come in and have a good opening game, and it just wasn't there. They looked awful. And, Russell Wilson, I think we can pump the brakes on the Comeback Player of the Year award. I think
statistically, I thought he played pretty well. I couldn't really put all the blame on Russell Wilson like we could last year. And
Raiders look good
Hackett for his, horrible play calling. And it's like, do you really believe Nathaniel Hackett? Was one of the lines I heard this week, which I thought was fantastic. I forget who it was, but they said, Nathaniel Hackett's really good at playing darts with Aaron Rodgers. But how good at actually coaching Aaron Rodgers was Nathaniel Hackett. In other words, how's he going to do with a younger quarterback in Zach Wilson? I wonder if Sean Payton is too old school for today's modern NFL. And if he's going to end up losing the Bronco team at some point, but it's just early for them. I'm going to wait a couple weeks before I pronounce any pronounce the decision to hire Sean. They were skeptical about bringing him in. He wasn't meeting with them and they signed him on the spot. They went home, talked it over with their relatives. They didn't make that decision right away, Brad. So there was definitely some skepticism. He's a good coach. I just wonder if he's maybe too harsh for today's modern day Deion Sanders approach to football.
All right, real quick, we got football to watch tonight. I want a score from you on the Vikings Eagles game. What's that going to be?
31-20 Eagles. How about you?
I'm going to go 23-20 Eagles. I think it's a closer game. Vikings play well, come up short. That's what I feel.
All right. There you go. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's Gods of Odds. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave DeBopp in Northern California. Wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing week.